Shana Tova. If you open a Sefer Torah, if you open a copy of the Bible and begin to read it, it won't take very long for you to find out the first question that God asked Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. As some of you may know, that first question was, Ayeka, where are you? And as you may imagine, it was not about their physical location, because God knew exactly where they were. Rather, it was an expression of God's desire to connect with them and then to connect with us and to foster a meaningful relationship with each and every one of us. It is fitting that we remember today that first question, because Rosh Hashanah marks the creation of the world and the birth of humankind. It is fitting because as we reflect on the history of humanity, we can identify the ups and downs, the moments of order amidst the cycles of madness and despair we all go through. Open the Torah and you will see the same pattern. In the beginning, the world was a complete mess. Tohu vabohu, as Genesis describes it. In that context, God's primary task was to bring order to the chaos, moving from the simple to the complex, separating light from darkness, and ultimately creating the first human beings. But darkness, it seems, was never fully extinguished. And in every generation, we are called to face the forces of destruction that threaten life itself. From that famous opening scene, the Torah quickly moves to Noah and the universal flood. Later, we read about the slavery in Egypt, the hardships in the wilderness, and the challenges of settling in the land of Israel, among many other things. By the end of the second book of Kings, we encounter the destruction of Jerusalem and the exile of the Jewish people to Babylon. Perhaps on Rosh Hashanah we mark the creation of the world and the birth of humankind, because the act of creation is everlasting. Chaos is always waiting for us just around the corner, and it is our responsibility to seek solutions to the problems and not problems to the solutions. We are partners with God in creation, and especially in our times, we are called to find meaningful and creative ways to move forward. Now, as we reflect on these ideas, it is interesting to note that in biblical Hebrew, the word mashber means both crisis and birth stool. If you think about it, that makes a lot of sense. Every new beginning brings with it the anxieties of the unknown, and we are often caught in a whirlwind of emotions. A moment of crisis can become an opportunity for renewal and growth, but none of that comes easily, and none of that is exempt from sorrow and pain. The mashver we are experiencing in our days should prompt us to contemplate where we are, and even more challenging, where we want to be as individuals, families, citizens of this blessed nation, and also as members of the Jewish people and staunch supporters of Medinat Israel, of the State of Israel. Usually when our classic texts discuss the creation of the world, they don't use metaphors related to pregnancy. Yet, this particular theme appears once and again during the high holiday season. We see it in the Torah and in the Haftorah readings for these days, with Agar, Sarah, and Hannah having kids in the symbolic image of Rachel crying for her own children that Zev just read in our Haftarah for the day. These stories portray the hopes, fears, challenges, and aspirations of parents and children as they face the unique trials of their time. They remind us that our covenant is with life and continuity, even though our personal journeys may at times include some unexpected twists and more than a few harsh disappointments. Besides these biblical stories, there is a particular prayer in the Mahzor that explicitly references pregnancy and birth. We read this prayer right after we blow the shofar during Musaf. In Hebrew, this prayer is known as Hayom Arat Olam, a text that is usually translated as "Today the world was called to existence," or "Today the world is born." In this prayer, we ask God to have compassion on us as a father has compassion on his children, hoping that God will relate to us with abounding kindness and love as only a parent can care for their children. What I find profoundly moving about this prayer is the subtlety with which our rabbis chose its particular words. When crafting our prayers, the rabbis love to quote passages from the Torah, from the Bible, but they did so without providing any footnotes. Consequently, if we want to uncover the multiple layers hidden in these prayers, we must engage in a bit of a homework. And so that is what we are going to do right now. So in the case of this liturgical piece, the sages aimed to play with two words spoken by Prophet Jeremiah during an especially trying time in his life. By the second half of chapter 20 in the book of Jeremiah, Jeremiah appears tired, frustrated, and on the brink of collapse. He complains to God because people laugh at him all the time, because no one pays attention to what he is saying, and because he feels utterly helpless. He is angry and afraid, in a great deal of pain, disheartened and dismayed. In this context, the prophet curses the day of his birth. He has reached his limit, and now he wants out. He is suffering to the extent that he wishes his mother would be Arat Olam, which is, in the context of the Bible, pregnant forever. What an image. In all honesty, it doesn't seem fair to Jeremiah's mother. But it certainly illustrates his exhaustion and burnout. Moreover, Jeremiah's words provide us with new language to express what many of us have felt during these past challenging months. How many of us have said at one point or another, "Come on, give me a break"? How many of us have cursed, screamed, and cried because we felt lonely, disempowered, and hopeless? How many have felt that these past few months have lasted for a decade and a half? It is hard not to resonate with Jeremiah. It is really hard not to feel his pain, his anger, or his fear. So let me tell you this. It is okay to acknowledge that we are afraid, and it is okay to realize that we are not okay. In fact, it can be helpful, because once we are aware of where we are, we can do something about it. Especially in these times, it's probably impossible to not feel anxious. However, we must always remember that the problem with fear, with anger, and with despair is that once they get out of control, they can drive us to build walls around us, instigating mistrust and pushing us to establish barriers that keep us apart. We can't continue fostering an environment where the gaps between us grow wider and wider. We can't normalize families that break or friendships that suffer because of differing political views. The more we let those on the extremes shape our culture and our discourse, the more likely we are to become like Jeremiah, ready to withdraw from the world and unwilling to use all our gifts to promote a different kind of conversation. Instead, we should strive to create a framework that allows us to agree to disagree, always seeking to listen to the better angels of our nature, while working with others for a better future for all. At this point, we can see the genius of our sages and how they flipped Jeremiah's words upside down to show us a possible way forward. Because when life is a mess, when reality is chaotic and we want to retreat behind the false safety of thick walls, we can choose between two different paths. We can be like Prophet Jeremiah and wish for our mothers to be pregnant forever so that we won't have to take any part in this ugly world. Or we can affirm with our rabbis, Ayom Arat Olam, proclaiming that today the world is giving birth to all the creative potential within us, along with the dreams and the aspirations that may become our reality if we dare to make them happen. It's not by chance that this prayer is recited after we blow the shofar. 3 different times. We will do it in just a few moments. According to the Torah, one of the reasons for sounding the shofar was to commemorate the moment when slaves became free. Therefore, every time we hear the shofar, we should strive to free ourselves from the shackles of too much fear, anger, and despair, and to recommit to the sacred task of making things slightly better for everyone around us. One last thing. According to our mystics, the shofar can be seen as a womb filled with light. At first glance, this is also a very unusual image, especially considering that looking inside the shofar doesn't reveal much light. However, that might be the whole point of this mystical teaching. When everything around us looks gloomy and dark and dangerous, we have to remember that our own actions can bring some light into this world. So as this new year begins to unfold, we are called to be the midwives of a better today and the agents of change for a brighter tomorrow. In that spirit, may God bless us all with the ability to remain true to our own gifts, the strength to overcome our fears, and the willingness to move beyond our anger and despair. May we continue to be partners with God in the creation of a society that makes us proud, and may our good actions inscribe us in the book of life, as we hope to enjoy a year filled with plenty of health, with plenty of peace, and with plenty of love. Shana Tova.